Hello everybody and welcome back to Rule the Roost podcast. You know you haven't heard enough of my voice, that's why you're listening. That's why you're listening, isn't it? But you're not just listening for me. If you followed like one of the kind of the various probably tweets I'll be doing out the back of this, and this guy will be doing out the back of this, you're most likely coming for Spooky 23. Spooky, how are you doing, mate? I don't know why I'm referring to you by your full handle, but I just am.
No. It's funny because I was obviously it was Flav's wedding this past weekend, and when I was introducing myself, I kept defaulting to Spooky, and then when I did introduce myself by my government name, it felt really uneasy and really weird. But then I had my daughter there who just looked at me and thinking, Dad, mate, you're old. Why are you going by this silly daft name? And it's like that's just who I am. You don't really know me. My government name isn't my real name. My avatar and persona online, that's me. That is basically me most days of the week, to be fair. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I'm talking about football all the fucking time. Yeah. Football.
Well, the weird thing is, like, you know, as you said, you call it the government name. I've known that probably almost as long as I've been talking to you, at least, anyway. Yeah. But I don't think I've ever really called you by it. It's weird, you know. It doesn't feel right.
It is. It's one of those things when anyone, yourself or any of the other lot, call me by my real name. It's almost like I'm gonna get told off.
Yeah.
it's like suddenly my parents. Yeah, they're broken the fourth wall and they're going straight in now. But yeah, I'm all right. What I was going to say, though, is I think people are a bit fed up with me. I'm getting the feeling that my persistent optimism and my call for patience and perhaps kind of clouds the reality that I'm not completely happy with what I'm watching. But I think people tend to gravitate more to me being happy clappy than perhaps listening to what I'm trying to say, like behind all the...
I mean, I'm not saying this is you, Spooky, but have you heard the expression toxic positivity? It's the new wave of kind of COD psychology that the internet likes to do.
So just I kind of already know what this is going to be, but just quickly explain to me, like why.
Toxic positivity is, you know, when you're in those situations when you just want to vent. If you just want to say to somebody, oh, you know what, this is really fucking shit. Like my boss has been an asshole. My partner's done something bad. I'm really skint this month, and everything on the news is just really getting me down. And if somebody's just like, come on, look on the bright side, it doesn't matter, you just got to keep going, and you just got to kind of get over it. It's that kind of feeling that your legitimate problems are being invalidated and just... Yeah. You know, it's a kind of sense.
Absolutely, that's absolutely not me, because I think the good thing about the people that I follow, the people I in fact, the people I just talked to on Twitter, for the most part, wouldn't stand for that shit and would call me out for it. And some do, but they do it in the right way. You know, they pose a particular perspective and then ask me to maybe question my own, which is the way Twitter should work. You know, if it's at its very finest, as opposed to getting DMs saying, I always knew you talked a load of bullshit, and then just get... So, how do you want me to react?
Sorry about that, mate. You know, you wound me up a bit, that's all.
But people seem to take great pride in I don't know, being in the right and you're in the wrong. It's like it becomes less about the football, more about, well, look at what I predicted. And as I've said many times before, it's very, very easy to basically say Conte will fail at Tottenham, because the likelihood he will, because the odds are so stacked against us. But then obviously it's very layered. What is failure? Did Pochettino's team fail? Yeah, some Spurs fans will say his team failed, but I would say it was a generational experience for me, probably the best side that I've seen since 1987, or even Redknapp's team. It wasn't a failure really in the purest possible sense. It wasn't a failure, but I understand that people are now putting everything on silverware and pretty much dismissing everything else, which is an interesting conversation because often you do get people that have said over the years, I don't care how we play football, I just want us to win something because I just want us to win something, which is a fine sentiment, kind of goes against what we are as Spurs fans, but we realise that we have to be a bit grown up about it. And I guess that's where I am. I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of style and a little bit of swagger just for us to be really hard to beat. But obviously, I still want us to be entertaining. Well, so that's where I am basically. I know we're going to talk about this in more detail.
Well, no. But... I mean, we're on it now, so let's just do it. Like, because it is interesting. There's obviously been a lot of, should we say, complaining makes it sound like it's all completely negative. But I mean, people sort of voicing their issues with what's going on at Spurs at the moment. But okay, so we talk about things. We talk about kind of reducing everything to this binary. Pochettino won nothing, thus equals failure. Funnily enough, I've even seen people saying recently that on balance, Jurgen Klopp is a failure at Liverpool, which I think some of it is quite churlish. It weirdly seems to be Arsenal fans. Quite a few of Arsenal fans seem to have set their sights on Liverpool at the moment. I think in their heads, they've already leapfrogged us and they're going for Liverpool now. Whatever. Leave them to that. But I've seen a few people say that of Klopp, saying that, he should have gotten more Premier League titles over the line. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say, but he effectively has won at least three Premier League titles in the past few years. I'm sorry to say, but if anybody doesn't consider 99 points with one loss on the board not a title-winning season, just because they haven't literally lifted the title. And I know this sounds ridiculous. It sounds like I'm kind of doing a 2 + 2 = 5. And I suppose I am to a degree, but football is so totally and utterly warped now, right? That's kind of more the point, that to even consider what Liverpool have done these past few years or what Klopp has done as a failure, to me is preposterous. And I know we've had our gripes in the past. We've said, oh, they spent money on Van Dijk and they spent money on Alisson. But really, Liverpool and Tottenham's, other than maybe the wages, the spending has been comparable. What Liverpool have done is magnificent. It is magnificent. And I want to sort of focus on this point a bit more in a bit, not at this moment, but watching Manchester City last night, right? Watching the inevitability of that, watching Haaland obviously do some ridiculous, freakish kind of volley to win the game for them when they played like trash for most of the game and then ended up winning it anyway. That inevitability of that, and of them, let's be honest, winning the Premier League again this year, I don't envy that for a second. I would rather have what Tottenham are, or what Tottenham were under Pochettino, with the promise of maybe winning something. I'm not saying of never winning anything, but just having, before people jump on this and say, oh, Poch sexual and stuff, just wants Pochettino in charge and to never win anything.
Nothing wrong with that fetish, that particular fetish. That's fine.
But do you know what I mean? I'd rather be essentially what Spurs are now, maybe living in hope of winning something big and maybe getting it across the line every now and again. But the inevitability of winning the Premier League more seasons than not. I mean, the only team really that's broken City's stranglehold on this was 1 year when Liverpool did it, playing to such a freakish level themselves, and City happened to have an off year. And other than that is Chelsea, who are another team assembled by billionaires. What people don't want to look at, people can say ENIC have fucked up or Pochettino is a failure, whatever. But what we're not looking at is, in the past 15 years, how absolutely grotesque football has become, to the extent that even, let's be honest, it destroyed Arsene Wenger and it's destroyed Manchester United. Two of the Premier League's institutions, those two teams. And great, we can laugh at Arsenal and we can laugh at United. It is fun to see their demise and it's fun to see the way in which their fans react to that. But the only point I'm making is nobody is safe from what has happened to football, right? Manchester United have spent so much money desperately trying to cling on to what they had under Ferguson, but it just isn't enough. And I think they have been slightly mismanaged. They've made some poor managerial appointments because they are still spending a lot of money, and I get that. But they're spending money in a completely unsustainable fashion. They're in so much debt, and they're to me, in my mind, they're another Barcelona waiting to happen. Manchester United, it's ridiculous. The stadium's falling to pieces. they're essentially now a clothing brand internationally. They're something for, in the same way that people wear New York Yankees caps over here every now and again. That's kind of what Manchester United are. They're a big brand. But back to what we were kind of talking about is that, if we're looking at what Conte is doing this year, really, this is what perplexes me. Like, what do people want? Yeah, we lost a game, right? We lost one game, and to be honest, we should have won that game, right? We were we were sloppy at key moments, and we didn't get it across the line, and we lost the game. But it's the first game we've lost this season, and people keep talking about, like, we haven't looked good, we haven't been playing well. It was a matter of time until that came, but that's not what I've seen all year. I've seen Tottenham, yes, look fairly underwhelming in an attacking sense, and that's, let's be honest, that's largely down to kind of a stuttering Kane and Son. But we're still getting the results. We're joint second in the table. We've won more games than we've lost. We've conceded like 5 goals in the Premier League. We are objectively having a good season. But the way in which people are talking right now, it's like we're completely failing. And this is kind of, I got dug out a lot at the start when I was kind of voicing my issues with Antonio Conte. And I'm really not trying to do an I told you so, but I got a lot of shit from people for basically just saying that I don't really like his style. I don't like this kind of grind football that he plays.
Yeah, I remember.
I don't think it's very top. I wasn't saying he was shit. I wasn't saying it was this. I was just saying that. And I was getting called all sorts of fucking names for just saying that type of thing. But now we're here, nobody seems to like it. So what do people want? Because we are objectively a good team. We're a strong team.
So there's quite a bit to unpack here. First of all, before I forget, the whole thing about football being warped, you're bang on right with that. It's okay in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't mean anything. It's kind of war a trophy memes. even the Liverpool thing with the 99 points. Okay, absolutely phenomenal team. Didn't win the league. But you would consider them, if you're going to talk about football in the right way and have a discussion with someone in the right way and not point scoring, you would arguably say they're one of the best. That was one of the best teams, one of the best sides in the Premier League era. Okay, I know United supporters are going to say we won the treble, and I'm not saying they're better than the team that won the treble because they won the treble. I'm saying that if we're going pound for pound on performance, if we're going pound for pound on what you're actually seeing with your eyes as a Liverpool supporter or as a neutral, it was a phenomenal team. And to a lesser extent, you can say the same thing about the Spurs team. The Spurs team under Pochettino, the team that finished behind the machine that was Conte's Chelsea. Phenomenal football team, right? Over 2 years, probably the best side in the Premier League. Again, didn't win anything, but the point I'm trying to illustrate is the standard. This thing about Spurs. We've won one trophy in 20 years. It is a bit of a fallacy when you actually look at the progression we've made from being absolutely mediocre nothingness left behind by Sky Sports Top 4 and then slowly climbing the ladder again, slowly progressing. Granted, because the Sky Top 4 started to degrade a little bit when Martin Yeo was manager and we started knocking at the door, and then Redknapp obviously consolidated that kind of first trip into Europe for the Champions League and so on. We have progressively got better, and at one point we were fucking amazing. We were immense, and yet we didn't win the league, and we probably should have. And again, people will say, Spurs fans especially, that doesn't mean anything. You're celebrating failure. Well, no, we're celebrating the fact that some of us have this siege mentality and this awareness that we are up against an impossible challenge unless we get bought out by a billionaire playboy that's just going to pump money into the team, which isn't going to happen at this point, right? So in terms of the whole warped discussion, the annoyance for me is I don't think Spurs fans know how to bond in a way that gets behind the team, almost in a cult type of way, like Liverpool fans.
Yeah,
I know
I agree with
we berate Liverpool fans, we hate them and so on. But they, and you've said this many times, it's been said by a fair few people, to be fair, because it's probably factually correct. They will their team to success. I mean, they've got foundation, they've got the players, and they've got the manager. But there's this absolute belief they are going to win everything.
Look at Madrid, the way they win the Champions League all the time, how entitled their fans are, how they pull them across the line.
It's again, this has got nothing to do with football tactics and analysis. It's more cosmic. It's more about the universe. It's not very meaningful unless you're really high and you start talking about stuff like this. But there is something to it because the one good thing about Spurs fans at the very least is that we've always been believers, right? We've always, when we were crap, we were dreamers, but then we started to believe because we could see evidence that we could possibly do something. So we do naturally and consistently drive the ambition of this football club. That is why Spurs are as big as they are, even though we don't win anywhere near the trophies that other football clubs have, right? So I'm not slagging off our fan base, but I am saying that we do have this problem with coping with what it means to be a big team because we haven't got that reference point. So to answer your question around what is it that we want, again, this is something that I've banged on about and bored people to death with, and I think I'm fairly sure I'm getting muted left, right, and centre at the minute, and I'm trying to back away from it as well a little bit because I know I'm a broken record with stuff like this, but we wanted a winner. We wanted Conte. We questioned Conte very early on when he rejected us or we rejected him because he's not the right fit, the way he plays. There was this fallacy again. He'd come in, destroy the club, win something and disappear and all that kind of stuff. So there was all these narratives that weren't really meaningful in the grander discussion. But when we finally got him, it was a statement. And it was a frustrating season last year because he inherited a mess, a broken team, assembled from the remnants of Pochettino's and what Mourinho tried to put together and so on. But look at the hype at the end of the season and look at the belief and the hope in the summer. And it's literally taken, one defeat and some underperforming games, performances rather, butchered that sentence, that's now making people doubt, well, maybe he isn't the right fit, or maybe he is too stubborn, or maybe deep down he doesn't believe he can win anything with this team, so he's being overly cautious so that he doesn't lose games. These are fair discussion points. I'm not dismissing any of this stuff because there are questionable things around his rotation. There are questionable things around his selection. There are questionable things around his loyalty to certain players. Emerson at right wing back, for example. These are things to discuss, but it's so early that to be totally dismissive, I think, isn't the right energy. But fair enough, you do you. But the other massive problem is the whole thing around turning it into, well, I don't like the football. But you know what Conte does. You know the type of football Conte plays. But we also know when Conte's football is really good and effective, we can smash teams left, right and centre. Mainly because of the way that we attack, the way we get forward and the players that we have when they're on song can literally beat, we can beat most teams in the Premier League. And we turn up for Liverpool and we turn up for Man City. So we have the traits there. We just haven't started very well. And I think if Son was even at 60% of his capacity, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation now because we'd score more goals and we'd be a little bit more comfortable in games. And we're still moan about, well, it's not super exciting, but we'd be talking about, oh, Tottenham are a proper team now. Because, like, again, we've discussed this before, City, for all their players, Liverpool, for all their players, sometimes are not that attractive to watch. They just get the job done when they're not performing at a level where they're swamping and destroying football teams.
I mean, City are never that fun to watch, though, are they? Really, let's be honest.
They're relatively boring. I mean, you mentioned Jack Grealish the other day, and I think I saw an article on Twitter. The kind of question, or maybe it was a tweet actually from some random person, but it was on point because he said he was a baller at Aston Villa, and what is he at City? He just tippy-tappy football pass. It gets fouled still, but it's like it's very much a template that you fit in, And the template, it works so well because you literally have elite players in every single position. So the likelihood is they don't really need to play that expansively to beat teams because of the quality they have. But when they step it up, they will absolutely pull you to pieces. So with Spurs, I think we are just a little bit, not everybody, because most people that I've seen on my feed have valid points and I agree with them. But there is an element that will default to the type of petulance that we often, kind of point over there at the other end of the Seven Sisters and say them lot down the road, are literally crying over a couple of poor results. And I think that's creeping in. And we've got nothing. We shouldn't be entitled because we haven't delivered on anything. So the only thing that we can really do is to calibrate to what you mentioned, the sentiment behind just immersing yourself in the journey. Yes, it would be better if we were more entertaining, but it's still very, very, very early. And I think if Son and Kane are bang on it, if Kulusevski's back in the team, I think things change massively for Tottenham. Even though we need a creative midfielder or a talisman of sorts, even though we need a quality right wing back, there's still more than enough there for us to finish in the top three.
I think the thing is that I pick up, and I'm not saying you're doing this at all. I'm not following off of your point.
Accuse me,
but there's a common thing that's said at the moment, as in like, and this is of Spurs fans themselves generally. Spurs fans, we always do that. Oh, we always act this way. We always, and I mean, I think some issues like this kind of knee jerkness of a lot of Spurs fans at the moment, I do think is particularly there's a unique type of knee jerking to Tottenham's fan base at the moment. But I think we've spoken about this before, and I know every club is going to say this of themselves, but I do feel that other people outside of this could objectively look at Spurs and say that we occupy, I would say, a really unique position in English football, at least, in so much as we are in pretty much every quantifiable measure one of the biggest clubs in the country, on par with United, Arsenal, Chelsea, City, Liverpool, all of them. But the main difference is that we haven't won the Premier League. Let's put it that way. We haven't won the Premier League, and we haven't won the FA Cup for 25 years or something now.
91.
Not that long, yeah. Quick maths. No, even longer than that. Fucking my maths is terrible. Longer. What is it? 31 years.
It's ridiculous the amount of time.
Wait, hang on. Is 31? Honestly, my math dyscalculia, right? I'm being honest, like dyscalculia. But anyway, and it's the fact that we are so we get these opportunities, right? We get things like the Pochettino coming so close to winning the league on a couple of occasions. Obviously, Leicester got there ahead of us. And yeah, it's always going to be convenient to say it was a freak season, but it really was. Like, Spurs weren't going into that. The thing is like, people say, oh, it was a missed opportunity. Nobody was expecting Spurs to go into that season. Like, we went into that season thinking it would be lovely if we managed to sneak into the top four this year in the 15-16 season. Yeah. And then we saw Leicester suddenly running away with it, and we had that momentum because everybody else was on an off go. But it took us as by surprise as it did everyone else. So again, there's this media narrative that was painted that Spurs were a failure then, but we were a young team. We finished third, obviously, ultimately, and third in the 2-horse race, as we know. But look at the way they speak about, and this does play into it, right? Look at the way the media speak about Arsenal. Look at the excitement they have for Arsenal's resurgence now. The way they missed out on the top four last year to Spurs, but it didn't matter because they're a plucky young team and all this. Spurs were like one of the most exciting and youngest teams in the country under Pochettino, and still everything we did was derided. It was treated as a failure, as opposed to what it should have been, which was exciting and good for the league and a good example to other clubs. That there was a team fighting against the likes of Chelsea and Manchester City, more often than not beating Manchester City, as we still do. But it's still lol Spursy, lol failures, all this type of stuff.
To be fair, Gary Neville and one or two other pundits did give us a bit of credit during that period of time.
It's kind of half-assed though, right? It's always always a kind of and a side on a Monday Night Football, which is their kind of deeper magazine show, if you like, isn't it? Right? It's they're never leading out, they're never punching, they're never trying to disrupt the narrative. Really, that
people are waiting for Spurs to fail to say, well, there you go, Alan Hansen was right. They're always going to let you down and so on, because it's that weird protection of the teams that are always expected to win, and they're the ones that always have. I mean, you can look when Man United played Arsenal, and they were showing footage from previous encounters, and it's so irrelevant because these two teams are no longer rivals. Do you know what I'm saying? There's no story between them anymore.
It's bollocks, though, isn't it? But you see this. You see, Keown jumping at Van Nistelrooy. Fucking get over it now. Like, do you know what I mean? No one gives a shit. Oh, Fabregas threw pizza at Sir Alex Ferguson, did he? Great. Do you know what I mean? It's like we're almost talking about a fucking grenade being thrown at the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's what relevance does it have anymore? Like, just kind of give it up. Give up this idea. But this is what... And I cannot help but feel a little swivel-eyed about this type of stuff. When you think about the power of the brand, the power of the Premier League, the power of these big clubs, you cannot help but think that they want to kind of keep those establishment clubs relevant and strong.
100%. That's all it's about. 100%.
This idea of Tottenham, this upstart, this not classically pretty team, I do think I'm not just going to be one of those kind of everybody hates us. I do think the media and the narrative is warming to Tottenham since we built the stadium, since we've actually been a consistent Champions League team. We definitely considered amongst that bunch, but we're still the Cinderella, right, to the rest of them. That's the thing. Yeah. We're there, but we're not one of them yet. But to sort of my point about, like, you know, Spurs fans are so typical. I get it though. I get the stresses, and it sounds dramatic, but I do get the stresses of being a Spurs fan. It feels like we are under the microscope as much as somebody like Manchester United. I think Manchester United are a club similar to us that often their failures are highlighted now in a way, but it's always done more in a way of like, well, I'm not angry with them. I'm disappointed that the Manchester United should be performing that way. Whereas with us, it's always, they thought they were going to do something good. You know, it's kind of, it's totally skewed. And I can understand why the promise of seeing somebody like Antonio Conte with all his kind of his glittering past coming into Tottenham, us signing some good players, us managing to hold on to Harry Kane, us having the Golden Boot winner in Son last year, why we should be primed to just like, fucking let's go. Right, City exists, but we've got our own kind of good thing here. Let's barnstorm the league. Let's just go through and smash everybody to pieces. But Conte's not that guy, is he?
No, I mean, I think this is, and we knew this. We knew this, but what we focused on, rightly so, was how he can turn teams into title winners. I mean, he's won. He wins titles no matter where he goes. The kind of paradox around that is Spurs the right type of club? And obviously Conte has this kind of weird persona when he's in front of a camera. He comes across as a completely different personality to the one that you kind of have a sneaky feeling that he is when he's on the training pitch. He seems very committed to the players. He seems very connected to the club. He seems to get along very well with Levy. But in front of the camera, he will say things, whether it's a psychological kind of Machiavellian type of ploy, it's his own way of processing things, or his own way of controlling the narrative, deflecting, or just letting people know, oh no, we're not contenders. We haven't got the money to, we need several windows to do this. So he's understating and underplaying everything on purpose, perhaps. You don't know, right? Obviously, people take what he says at face value and then create headlines out of it. And journalists do that along with the supporters, because then it fits into whatever agenda they have around the club not backing the manager, because then they've got something to fall back on if it goes wrong, again, like I said, the odds are likely that we won't do anything under Conte, because that's what history tells us. So the paradox itself is Spurs aren't the right fit for Conte. If you really want to look at it, in terms of the money that's available, the players that were there already, and maybe the foundation of having that experience to reference to, because teams that he goes to tend to be teams that have won things recently, so it becomes an easier job because you've got most of what you need already at the club. But it's a big challenge, and it would be it would be an incredible achievement for Conte to win something big at Tottenham for that reason, because it's this cursed football club. But we're not really cursed. And this is the narrative he might play into. But we're not cursed. Like you said, we probably would have won quite a fair bit if it wasn't for Man City and Chelsea. Other football clubs will argue the same point, no doubt. So what he's doing, what he's trying to do at Spurs is a massive challenge. I think I understand that. But I'm willing to back him because we've tried everything else in recent times. We've been a club that has experimented and perhaps often fallen into the right man by accident, which is why, there's reason to be critical of the way we've managed that side of the football club, under Daniel Levy. But a lot of football clubs go through a lot of managers. Even the big teams go through a lot of managers. It's just that we don't have that foundation to bounce off from. So we're starting almost from ground zero, and we're trying to achieve something for the first time. So again, I wish we were more committed to being proud about what we're trying to do. I wish our fan base looked up and thought, oh, fuck all of them, fuck the media, fuck all these other football clubs that have things handed to them on a plate. Let's graft, let's do as good as we can, and let's just believe in our club and our team, and just not fragment the entire experience. But football is warped, football is distorted. Again, to come back to what it means, like me talking about Pochettino's team as being generational, and others saying it's your fault we never win anything, mate, because you're glorifying failure and this, that, and the other. So is Harry Kane a failure because he's never won anything? Is Ashley Young a better player than Harry Kane because he's won title winning medals and the rest of it? Can we have just a little bit of cohesive, intelligent discourse around this? Yes, we want to win things. Of course we do. Yes, every sporting, whether it's basketball, American football, whatever, anything around team sports is about winning things. But we also know the reality is that not every club wins things. Like it's actually then more about the participation and the experience. And Spurs have been pretty blessed. Again, you can bang on about the last 20 years on one trophy and all this kind of nonsense. But then you look at the teams and the players that we've had. We're pretty fucking fortunate. And we've also been desperately unlucky. It isn't Enoch or Levy that's let us down. Although you can have a conversation about not buying any players in certain transfer windows. But we have failed in moments where perhaps we overthought things in semi-finals and finals. We just didn't think like a big team because we don't have that mentality.
The Champions League final's a prime example, right?
Yeah, you've said that. Liverpool did everything. It's that thing. When you get to the final, doesn't matter how you play, win it. Just win it. Even if you have to play the most boring, turgid football, but you win 1-0, 2-0, you just do what you got to do to win it. And us being plucky old contenders Tottenham.
The squad team photo before the game, like turning up like we're kind of a minnow in an FA Cup semi-final.
Yeah, and that's fine because we don't have that to fall back on, and no amount of money spent by Levy would have changed that. What we need is a cultural change, but that cultural change has to be consolidated with something at the end of it, and that's why. And I know Conte doesn't stick around, and I know that's what people are ultimately worried about, but that's why I kind of back him, and I accept the sacrifices. I still question some highly dubious decision making that he's making, that he's actually failing to implement at the minute in terms of actually making the right decisions. I get all that, but if we want to be this team, then I think as one, we need to kind of back what we're trying to do here. We've done everything right with the infrastructure, Paratici, the coaching staff, all these other little things, the scouting system, things that are Conte talking about a couple of windows. I believe in all this, but I think it's the energy around it. We need to, we just need to put our energy into believing it. And I know people go, oh, but what does believing actually mean? Well, it's pretty much most of football. I mean, if you don't have any hope, you don't have any belief, then what are you actually doing? If you want to experience football as this kind of grand transactional, seasonal thing where you just log off for most of it, and at the end you go, well, what did we win? Oh, nothing. Shit season. Then it's not. You're not really going to get that much out of it, to be fair. And even when you do win something, you're then likely to moan that it's, we're going to need to do it again for it to mean something. So it's just that I know I'm off on one now, and I'll stop. But it's not as complex as I'm making it out to be. We've got a world-class manager who's a bit weird in moments, aren't they all? Pochettino, love him to bits, was equally weird. He made equally weird decisions. He was also incredibly stubborn. People tend to forget he's the one on many occasions that rejected players that Daniel Levy lined up.
Ross Barkley, famously.
Not because the players were not of the right quality, but because Poch had his own weird ways around squad harmony and the rest of it. So again, it'd be great if we actually got into the details and didn't just stick our flag on top of the hill and go, well, this is my opinion and I ain't shifting from it. I ain't going to admit I'm wrong and I'm not going to listen to your opinion. So it's football. This is why it's beautiful. This is why I love podcasting. This is why I like talking to you and other people, because I want to be proved wrong. I want to be tested. I want my opinions to be cut open and surgically analysed or whatever. Like, I want an autopsy of what I'm talking about, because I've got it wrong time and time again. I've backed AVB, got it wrong. I kind of backed Mourinho for a little bit, got it wrong. So people might say, well, you're backing Conte, so have you got it wrong again? And maybe my answer to all of that is I'm going to back whoever's in charge of Spurs, because ultimately I want us to be able to get somewhere. And if I'm going to be pessimistic all the way through the experience, it's not really going to feel like much if we do achieve something at the end of it.
Well, the funny thing is, though, because to the point I was making is that it just feels that, like, when Spurs are actually in a better place, that's when our fan base is always at the most anxious and the most angry and the most volatile. And I do get it. We've got Harry Kane coming to the end of his contract. We've got Son in his peak years, arguably now. We've got Conte. We've got Lloris coming to the end of his contract, the end of his career, really, in truth. We've got kind of exciting young players like Kulusevski, Romero, who no doubt will be turning a few heads in higher places. So I do understand why people get scared, they get anxious. They think, well, this is our chance to win something now. So can we just do it now, please? Because I feel that, like, there's a different type of ennui that falls over everybody when Mourinho is in charge or Espirito Santo is in charge. But I still think then, at that point, that's when I start to see the funny side of Spurs Twitter come out again. We're great at laughing at ourselves.
Yeah.
100%. We can absolutely enjoy it if, when we kind of default back into, right, well, we're finishing 7th or 8th this year or whatever. We've got our Tottenham back and everybody seems to enjoy it a lot more. It's actually when we're good that I notice that people are always the most fraught. And I do understand it. I completely understand it. I feel it a lot myself. I feel that when we're actually really good, the actual football I enjoy a lot less. Like,
do you know why, though? Do you know why?
Because I want us to win. Because I just want us to win. That's all.
There's right. Okay, so teams like Man United, when they were at their peak under Ferguson, every single game. I mean, they were likely to win most games of football, right? But that type of pressure, that every point mattered. You really are kind of tuned into that particular type of frequency, because at the end of it you're going to win the league. And even though they won the league many times, it will never feel as good as the first time. but it still felt great because they were beating whoever they were being challenged by, right? And it's a payoff. If you put your life into 38 games a season as a supporter and all the other cup competitions, you want that payoff at the end. It's going to always feel absolutely fantastic. But life at the top means that there is pressure and there's this. I guess you become accustomed to it after lots of success, but with us, we don't quite know how to handle it, so we kind of panic, and we for whatever reason we gravitate towards possibly trying to pick out flaws in what we're trying to do. So rather than look at the league table after a handful of games and say, look, we're doing really well, not playing great, there's things that need improving, people will fixate on the things that are wrong, rather than just thinking, well, if Son and Kane are just improved just a little bit, because Son's stats aren't that bad. He's getting shots on goal and the rest of it. It's just his overall play looks lacking severely in confidence and comfort. But if our key players are playing really well, things instantly change, and everything is solvable, especially with someone like Conte in charge. He will see that certain things aren't working. He will perhaps, even though he's stubborn, understand that he's got to be less cautious in certain games. But there's also things that we're not understanding that well. Listening to another podcast earlier today, and it's something that I was saying to the guy next to me at the Marseille game, that we have to play the way that we're playing, and it looks like we're not playing that well, but it's actually quite a clever ploy, and it didn't really work because the passing wasn't great in that first half. In the second half, there was a little bit more energy, and it was instantly, we got red card from the first burst of energy that Son produced. So there are things that need tweaking, no doubt about it, but I think we are just defaulting to being pessimistic because it's almost a deflection away from not being able to cope with that constant pressure. Because under Poch we had it, every game meant something. But under Poch we were quite fortunate that the football was incredible. So we were also entertained as well. And that's who I want to be as a Tottenham supporter. If you said to me now, bring back Pochettino and like in a peak Tottenham scenario, and this is really hypothetical nonsense, I would prefer that over Conte because the football would be better. But I'm realistic as well and know the fact that Conte's team, Poch's team, for all the swagger and swashbuckle and the rest of it, also struggled a lot. And consistency was an issue, when we were up against certain types of team. With Conte, I have a lot more faith that we're just going to be very, very, very hard to beat. And that we will more likely win a lot of games and have ourselves challenging as close as we can get to the freak City team with Haaland up top. So the point being is, I don't think we're built to withstand every game meaning something. So it's interesting because when we lost against Lisbon, I was absolutely devastated. And I know it's not a great thing to go, well, I remember the 1990s. That's been and gone. Like, okay, you can't really start bringing back shit from the past. Yeah, we were mediocre as fuck. But now our benchmark has been raised. And it's important that we want to win every game. And I think it's great that we hurt badly when we do lose a single game of football. Because it means that we have evolved as a fan base. But we haven't quite found the level that we need to kind of drop to and sit within. And that's probably because we haven't won anything at the end of being this type of team, this mature, growing up, proper Tottenham team. And that won't happen because we're like 10 games into the season, if that, not even that. So the whole patience thing obviously distorts a lot of perspectives. Finality, man. It's one of my favourite words. I think everything is like it's end of days. There's a lot of people I respect on Twitter, but a lot of them are visibly given up almost. They are predicting that it's not going to end well and nothing can be fixed. And again, it's just a personal thing. Like I don't understand. I mean, if it's a defensive mechanism, I respect it, but I think, what have you got to lose, really? What have you got to lose? Because we're a team that's trying to aim for the stars. Do you get what I'm saying? We're not a team that's achieved it. So what are we getting frustrated about? We're never this thing where we think there's guarantees in football. If we done this and if we done that, it's bullshit. There's no guarantees in football. I think for who we are and what we've had and what we've done, I think we're doing very, very well. And I think under Conte, it's worth seeing out this entire season. And then, you can point at me and go, you were wrong, Spooky. You got it completely wrong. And I can say, well, okay, there you go. You win.
We're talking about Antonio Conte and talking about kind of you touched on his weird decisions. There's none weirder to my mind at the moment. I get the kind of him not using his bench as much and whatever. I think that's a lesser issue. Not really a lesser issue, but the sort of the most acute issue I find at the moment is his treatment of Dejan Kulusevski. I cannot fathom it. I would say for let's say the tail end of last season and for the large part of this season, he's probably been our best player. So to see him kind of, and we talk about rotation and we talk about the big squad and the need for, I'm not talking about this as being droppings and all that type of thing. I mean, it is droppings at the moment, but you know what I mean. He's not started for 3 games now, or 4 games, it may be.
Yeah.
It feels very much like he's out of favour, if they've fallen out on the training ground or whatever. Fuck knows. But he's got to sort that out swift, because the Richarlison Kane Son thing at the moment ain't working. Like, it's not, to me, it isn't viable. It doesn't look right. There's been some talk today talking about Son's underlying numbers, that they're actually all right. Maybe he's just a bit unlucky. This is generally where I tend to fall out with. I like to joke about being a proper football man and all this. I definitely see the value in numbers, in stats and things like that. Yeah. I just don't see the value in letting them guide every single decision and every single talking point and giving you that kind of intellectual superiority in an argument when talking about football. Because I would say this right now...
Shots fired.
Well, no. But what we're seeing with Son right now is I am seeing lots of like, well, actually, he's not playing badly because look at these stats compared to previous seasons. This is one of those eye testings. Son's been terrible this year. He has been. And it feels harsh to single him out because Kane has not been playing well either. But Kane's scoring goals at the end of the day. Kane is scoring goals and pretty sure he's assisting goals as well. He didn't have a very good... Kane was awful against Lisbon. He was terrible. But to me, Son... This idea of Conte playing him through this rough patch, whatever, it's... At the moment, it seems to be...
It's not working.
It's detrimental to our attacking finesse, right? Like, we're getting things across the line. Do you drop him? Do you play Richarlison on the left? Or how does this work? Like, can Richarlison play off the left like that? Can Kulusevski? Or do you push Perisic up? Or what? Sorry, I know I'm asking a question.
No. The thing is, I don't have the answer other than start Kulusevski. Leicester City are not very good, right? Okay, we're at home.
They're horrific.
They're not very good at all, which is great. The goalkeeper, again, if you want to talk about someone that probably doesn't command his area confidently in front of the defence, which is already very fragile, it's literally made for us to kind of boost confidence and to kind of give us something back, and for Conte to maybe relax his stubbornness over rotation. Plenty of talk around why does he only rotate certain players? Why is he not giving other players a chance? Why? Obviously, again, it's the pragmatism of Conte. Do not, whatever you do, don't lose the game. But how about let's just win the game, and by default, you're not going to lose it. I mean, it's basic football when it comes to attacking is the best form of defence, right? But I know Conte's very, very, very strict around how his team play and the rest of it. Okay, fine. I completely appreciate that. But we haven't got a spark in the team. And Kulusevski has been so good since the back end of last season. He's again the type of player with ball at feet. He's going to do something. You almost feel you saw it when he came on against Lisbon and the way he got away from his man on one occasion. It was so slick and just so instinctively easy for him to do. This is a guy. Sometimes his body language kind of looks like he's not that fussed or bothered about anything, but his talent is just above and beyond the form of our other key players right now. And he's the spark. You can bang on about creative sparks from the centre, finding, having an Eriksen type of player, Yawn, and so on. I get it. We kind of do miss that. But Kulusevski is that extra type of dimension. He can make things happen. Players tend to move into the right positions when he's on the ball because he's going to deliver it, unlike maybe someone like Emerson. So just play Kulusevski. What you do with Son, really, I get historically we don't drop him. I get that his stats will tell you, as I mentioned earlier as well, that he is doing the right things or getting in the right positions and having efforts on target. But his overall play is very lethargic, very flat. And yeah, that has kind of infected. I'm not saying he has infected the rest of the team, but the lack of bright consistency from Kane has also impacted us. So you've literally got a team that is focused and centric on these players up front, and it's a bit jaded and a bit fragmented. So yeah, Conte needs to look at the team, and he's just got to be just a little bit. I know it's a rude word, but a little bit more expansive in how we approach teams, especially at home. What it does with Emerson is another discussion altogether, but start Kulusevski because he will create and he will have shots on goal. How he balances the rest, if it works, drops on, and just try and work out. I'm not a football manager. Do you know what I mean? It's up to Conte to kind of get the balance right, but it's not like the players aren't capable. And against a weaker team, there should be no excuses. The rest of the whole rotational thing is, again, you can read a lot into it. Why doesn't Basuma play? Is Basuma more attacking than Højbjerg? Is he more a kind of offensive minded? Is there a reason why he's opting for someone who can defend or protect more than perhaps play a forward ball or run box to box or whatever? So there's all these other little question marks. Like I said, there's lots of talking points around selection. But again, we're not in a terrible place. I don't look at Tottenham and think we're a calamity. I don't look at Tottenham and think it's a disaster zone. I don't look at us and think we're going to lose every game. I just think that we are playing within ourselves. And something that I kind of mentioned, we've been getting away with it, and we finally got done. Don't agree with that at all. I think the opposition have been getting away with it because Spurs are the ones holding themselves back a little bit with the way that we're playing.
That's a really good point.
I mean, we are genuinely Lisbon. I thought we're going to slap, and they were not.
The first half
great,
they looked awful. They didn't and it's bollocks, man. I don't like even the kind of this is what happens in the Champions League. I mean, I guess that kind of is a point, but still, this sort of idea that it was some sort of awful. There was like some sort of heroic comeback from them. It wasn't at all. Like,
they just were plucky. They kept
Spurs
going.
lost that game. Lisbon didn't win it. It's
exactly,
that stupid
100%.
sort of footballism. But
yeah,
they just weren't that good. All the kind of like the fawning over Marcus Edwards. I thought he was a good player, but
it was over the top.
Come on, man. Over the top. We've got Kulusevski. Kulusevski's younger, plays in the same position. Marcus Edwards is starting now for a Champions League team. We're both doing all right. But again, it was being used as this kind of stick to bash Tottenham. Look what Tottenham let go. And you can see it as well from, like I was talking to you about these kind of media things like, look at what happened. Tottenham let this guy go. And he did a run and nearly scored a good goal against them. But he didn't score a good goal. And he didn't really do much in that game at all. I'm not trying to dig him out, but I'm just fucking realise we've got this. And it wasn't really, there were a few Spurs fans doing it, but to me it was just so grass is greener. Just default back to the fact that we have Kulusevski there, who is younger than Marcus Edwards, and undeniably better than him and more talented than he is. You know?
Yeah, the whole Edwards thing. I mean, I've got nothing against the bloke, and I wish we did keep him, but it is what it is, and sometimes you need to leave to maybe blossom into the play that you wish to be.
Are you just repping the Cypriot thing there, mate? Is that what it is?
Actually, I forgot about I forgot about that. It's more to do with the fact that it hasn't. I mean, this is just me off the back of what you're saying with the coverage. They're looking for a narrative. I mean, there was one instant where Edwards, I think, might have had a shot or something, and the screech from the commentator, because it's like they want that story.
Oh, big time, squealing like pigs in shit, aren't they?
Yeah,
you know,
they don't believe it themselves, but it's just the way football is packaged, and that's fine. Sometimes it triggers me because it's like, bloody hell, just please be original for once. Just commentate on the game. We don't need the narrative. The football is all the narrative we need. What's happening on the pitch? You don't need to create these big, things around. This is the one that got away and whatever else.
Isn't it? It doesn't have to be not everything has to be reduced to this toxic negative level. Marcus Edwards is now having a great career. He's enjoying himself. Look how happy he was. He got one over. Exactly. Good luck to him. Good luck to him. And good on Spurs. We're doing all right ourselves. It doesn't need to be this whole kind of destructive kind of narrative about everything. It just pollutes everything. The thing is, it almost feels like this podcast has felt quite not negative, but it's felt like we're in the mire of a crisis because of the way we're talking. And this is what happens. This type of stuff pollutes things. I'm not trying to be a happy clapper. I face up to my feelings on Conte. I have done all along, but we're getting Conte ball. We are. It's not fun. It's not pretty, but it's robotic. It's ruthless. Yeah. And more often than not this season, we have won games. As soon as, like you said, and it's a perfect point that we haven't been getting away with it. Other teams have been getting away with it because there's many Premier League games that we've played already this season where we could have slapped the opposition if Son and Kane were firing. Fulham, we could have slapped them the other day. Forest, we probably could have slapped them as well. It's just because we haven't been quite ticking that we haven't been doing it, but we're still second in the table. We're still hardly conceding in goals. And I get it as well. For all the kind of Emerson Royale is getting dug out a lot at the moment, right? Mm-hmm. And I do understand that. Again, if I'm completely cards on the table, yes, we need a massive, massive upgrade on Emerson Royale. Massive upgrade. But are we surprised that probably the guy who is the best defensively, we don't really know what Spencer's capabilities are yet, but in terms of him and Doherty, we know that Emerson Royale is a fine defender. He's very good.
This is it. He can't cross and deliver and do the right things.
That's not what Conte's priority is. Not losing. It's not losing. He's a pragmatic, conservative manager. This is what you wanted. You wanted somebody that could deliver, that could win stuff for Tottenham. And unfortunately, when you don't have, as we were talking about with Pep Guardiola, when you don't have £250 million to overhaul our defence in one summer because we need this player there, we need a right wing back, we need a better left centre back, we need an upgrade on Eric Dyer because that would be cheap. I know everybody doesn't like Eric Dyer, but again, if you want to upgrade on a player like Eric Dyer, you're looking at £100 million. That's just the truth of it. That's the absolute truth of it. If you want to upgrade on, as we've seen, we wanted to upgrade Ben Davies. We're getting quoted 85 mil for Bastoni. This is it, right? Emerson Royale cost us 35-40 million. It's and he's not good enough. There's the argument that Jed Spence could be playing, but I think that's a different piece of this, right? If we're talking about the immediate success that we want, if we're looking at kind of competing with teams like Manchester City, we simply do not have the resources to go toe-to-toe with a club like that. Hence, we have this manager like Antonio Conte who can win ugly. And we just have to deal with that. If that's what you want, if your primary focus is, if Pochettino's a failure, if the journey is not important, if it's just winning something, then buckle up and try your best to enjoy what we've got with Antonio Conte because we are still objectively having a good season. It's just
completely agree, and it comes back to the fact that we're going to talk. people are going to talk about what they see. And obviously, if you're losing a game, you're going to talk about why we lost it. And if you're not playing particularly well, then you're going to focus on certain things. And I get that's what Twitter really, the thing that the economy that gets used more than any other is a little bit of anger, a little bit of controversy, or not even controversy, but just something that is a little bit negative because it's more likely to gain a reaction from someone. So you're going to look at the players that you don't rate and the players that you don't think are good enough, and so on. But yeah, the reality is that we're actually in a strong position because of what we've done since last season under Conte. But again, it's this. I don't know if it's a Tottenham trait, a human trait. We're going to focus on what's going to go wrong. It's just this weird nature that we have with it, and it ties back into prepping yourself for that inverted commas failure, because you just want to be able to make sure that you're not drowning in the misery that comes along with it. Because deep down, every single Spurs supporter wants Tottenham to do well. Obviously, I don't have to say that out loud. There's no one's better than anyone else. But perhaps where I tend to dive in and get myself into trouble is I have questions around how some people choose to follow their team. And again, it's up to them. It's their prerogative what they do. But if they're going to point the finger, and they've done this many times, at people like me and say it's because of you glorifying failure that we're not getting anywhere, then I'm going to react to it. And it's the only reason that I've been reacting to it so much in the last month or so. And I promise I'm going to try and back away from it as much as I can, unless someone directly comes for me and says something, and then I will have my point. But there's been some weird conversations on Twitter recently with supporters where they have kind of moaned about Conte, and it's done in a way like, well, this isn't good enough, mate. And that's the energy they're giving me, and I'm going to react to that because at that point I'm trying to understand what isn't good enough. What is it exactly that isn't good enough? Why are me and you having this conversation? It does sound like we're in crisis. Like, it's hilarious. Maybe it's because we know that we're onto something, right? And we're being protective of it. And we're trying to harness the positive energy by countering the negative energy. But there's nothing wrong in the negative energy, like we said, because Conte has done questionable things. So it's just this self-awareness. But I think some people don't know how to kind of balance themselves between the two. And perhaps that's where it gets a little bit dangerous. Because if we do hit bad form, let's say we do really well over the next a couple months, but then we have 3 games where it doesn't go according to plan. I mean, imagine that, Spurs struggling for 3 games and us defining that as a crisis. Again, that kind of shows you what's at stake, and that's a good thing. That's actually a positive thing.
I think the only thing about this, and this is kind of one of my bigger gripes with Conte, is the only problem with him is we do have a manager that will fuel those type of crisis moments. We saw what it was like at the tail end, not the tail end, but the start of his kind of, the midpoint of his tenure last season, the Burnley away game. When it literally looked like he was going to walk out after the game. I think I WhatsApped you after being like, mate,
you did.
Conte is quitting tomorrow. Like, he is quitting, but it really felt that way.
Yeah, no, it did. But again, I think that's just him being. This is the thing. He doesn't help. He doesn't help us. He doesn't help the fan base. He doesn't help.
He's not really done anything this year. I just want to hasten to add. I'm not.
No, he hasn't. On that level, but he's got that in him because that's how he seems to. That's how he seems to deal with things, and it's not the best method for obvious reasons because of the way the media react to it, and then the media feed into knowing that the fans are going to react. I mean, you saw it. Juve considering sacking their manager, and suddenly Conte's getting tapped up by Juventus, which isn't true at all. But people will read that and just change their entire outlook on Tottenham and Conte off the back of just some words appearing on their timeline. And it's that kind of thing. I think that all I want us to be is strong. I think too many of us, and again, maybe it's a historical inheritance. I think a lot of our fans are quite weak because I think they just decide it's not going to work. And my question to that is, it's never going to work then, because you're always going to be in a position where you just don't believe that there is a solution to whatever problem that we've got. But our problems are high level problems. They're top tier problems. They're problems that other clubs will never experience. And again, remember who we're up against. And sometimes we're up against ourselves, right? We're up against the way the club's managed things. And Conte might not be the answer, but he might be the stepping stone. He might provide us that cultural change. He already has to some degree with what we're doing behind closed doors. And maybe this is the only way a club like Tottenham can progress.
Look, come on, he's just keeping the bed warm for Pochettino, mate. We all know that.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen at some point, isn't it?
Oh, come on.
It's going to happen. But
if the stars align, that's the thing. That's always there. Because, we've seen sort of talk with Pochettino against Sevilla and stuff lately. So maybe, I don't know. But, yeah, I broadly agree with you, mate. And I just, you know what? I mean, we're going into an international break now. We don't really need to talk about the Leicester in terms of a preview so much. Because we've sort of rambled on now for quite a while. But what the main thing I really want to see from this Leicester game, like I said, we're going into an international break. Arsenal, the first game out the back of that after 2 weeks of rest. I just want to see us put in another performance like Fulham, but maybe even better. Maybe like the Southampton game at the start of the season.
Yes.
I just want to see us put Leicester to the sword, quash a bit of this, a bit of the kind of murmurings of discontent at the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe nice to get Son on the score sheet so we don't have that narrative hanging over us for the next 2 weeks and everything. Just all I'm asking of Tottenham now in this game is just leave things in a good place. Arsenal away at the Emirates, given how they're playing this season and just historically for us, and just whatever, it's a huge game in all respects. That it's massive, and I just want us to be on the forward foot for that one.
And just to kind of finish up, here's me finishing your pod, mate.
Go for it, mate. You're the GOAT, so you know.
I was going to say that why don't we fixate on the good performances? So if we smash Leicester 5-0, right, and Son scores and Kane scores and Kulusevski scores, and it's just a masterclass. Yeah, the opposition isn't great, but we've just shown the difference between the two teams. Why can't that be the benchmark for what this team's capable of? Do you get what I'm saying? Even though we know that Conte's going to be a little bit cautious anyway against other teams, it's often, I think, that again it's that trait that we have to focus on the negative stuff because that carries more weight in conversation than it does to just say, look at how brilliant we are. Because there's so many times you can say Kulusevski's fantastic, you then want to complain about Højbjerg or Emerson, because that carries more weight. So I think it's just, I think we probably shouldn't read that much into Twitter. I think deep down, I think Spurs players know what we've got, Spurs supporters know what we've got, know that it's a good thing, but are just concerned that we're going to let this slip through our hands for whatever reasons. So I think we're being a little bit anal with the way that we're maybe critiquing Conte. We're perhaps not even giving him the credit to adapt and change. Pochettino was the same. He never made substitutions at the right time. There's always something to bemoan. There's always something that isn't quite right. So I think, for me, I think it's just easier to put my faith in the players and the manager and enjoy everything. Enjoy the ups, enjoy the downs. With Spurs, we know how it works. The bad times make the good times even better. And at the minute, it's not bad at all. We're a good team. We dicked Arsenal at the end of the season. We're in the Champions League. It's a bit of a learning curve, but it's not something that needs an entire season for us to work through. I think it's game to game, we'll improve and we get better. It's just who I am, man. I'm just a happy clapper. That's who I am. That's me.